NATO defense ministers have approved a plan to bolster the organization's presence in Eastern Europe as a deterrent to any aggression by Russia. CCTV's Jack Barton reports from NATO headquarters, where ministers also discussed the possibility of intervening in the refugee crisis.
The two-day NATO meeting opened with a warning from its chief that the world has become a more dangerous place in which the organization faces its biggest threats in a generation.
Continued unrest in Ukraine, failed and failing states in the south, the spread of terrorism and the largest refugee and migrant crisis in Europe since the end of World War II.
On Wednesday, the big concern was Russia.
We are faced with a more challenging and demanding security environment, not least caused by a more assertive Russia, investing heavily in defense, and also Russia, which has used military force to change borders in Europe and to intimidate neighbors.
All 28 NATO members approved a new multinational force that will rotate in and out of Eastern European member states. NATO has an agreement with Russia not to permanently deploy forces along its border, but the organization has been getting around that by rotating troops through on training missions. NATO is still to discuss the size of the force, but it will be backed by a large number of US armoured vehicles to be permanently stored in Germany and Eastern Europe. More money will also be spent on military infrastructure, including airfields and training grounds. The US has already announced plans to quadruple funding for troops and training in Europe. The Kremlin has described NATO's plan as a destabilizing factor designed to contain Russia. NATO also accused Moscow of deepening the exodus of refugees from Syria through its bombing campaign. Germany and Turkey have requested NATO help in dealing with that crisis.
We are now considering the request for NATO support for coping with the migrant and refugee crisis.
On Thursday, NATO will focus on the fight against ISIL in Syria and Iraq, but also in Libya, where the group has an increasingly strong foothold. Jack Barton, CCTV, Brussels.